Welcome to another tutorial for AP classes, this time on essay writing. Today we're going to look at the dreaded change and continuity essay. Why do I call it dreaded? Well, because for some reason students really have a hard time with the concepts of change and continuity. I'm not completely sure why, but I have a guess as to why it's the case. Students really don't have a problem with changes. That makes perfect sense. In fact, for you right now as a student, I can imagine life is all about changes. You have changes in your classes, your families, your friends, your activities, your voice. Okay, that's a really bad joke about going through the changes of growing up. But what is this whole continuity thing? So this is where students get really hung up. I mean, you probably get the idea of continuity. I mean, continuous is like in the word itself, right? So it must be referring to something that continues or a regular pattern of things. But how does that relate to history? Okay, let's start with your own personal life. Once upon a time in a country far, far away, Greece, there was a philosopher named Heraclitus, and he said that you never step in the same river twice. Huh? Yeah, you do. I mean, that's the river. I just stepped into it, and here I go again. But what he meant was that the water was moving so fast that you never step into the same river water twice. In other words, your life is just always about change. I mean, he has a point. Think about the timeline of your life. You were born, then you began to walk, then you began to talk, then you went to school, then you started to grow, then you started to learn stuff and sound smart, then you made a group of friends, you made a new group of friends, then you saw a lot of cool 1980s movies redone for the 2000s, and then you got to high school, then you got to AP classes, and now you're all done, right? Yeah, no. You're going to keep growing and changing. So big question. Are you the same person you were when you were a kid? Yeah, I know. You're going to want to answer, of course not. But is that true? Yes, you have changed a lot. But think about what has not changed. If you had blue eyes as a kid, you probably have blue eyes now. If you had black hair as a kid, you probably have black hair now. Is your personality different from your siblings and friends? My guess is that you have a particular personality and that's probably remained pretty much the same. Also, while I'm sure your family has gone through a lot of changes, you still have a family that loves and cares about you. And while you have changed schools over the last several years, you have been continuing in your education throughout this whole time. In other words, the details may have changed, but a lot of the overall themes of your life have remained constant or continuous. The same is true of history. And it's especially true of countries, regions, and cultures. Things change, but there are certain elements that remain continuous. Think of China for a moment and what we studied this year. It's gone through a lot of changes. Empires have risen and fallen. China has been invaded by steppe people, including the Mongols, the Jurchens, and the Uyghurs. China's had a lot of different rulers, but Chinese culture has continued to be defined by filial piety, respect for your ancestors, and pride in cultural identity. Okay, so what does this have to do with essay writing? You are going to get change and continuity long essays. You'll be expected to make arguments about what has changed and the patterns that have remained continuous. You're going to need to know how to set this up. So here's the good news. As with all our essays this year, the pattern is the same. First, you start with contextualization. Then you do your counter thesis and thesis. Next, you're going to have body paragraphs. And in these body paragraphs, you're going to want a topic sentence, rule of three examples, and analysis. So that's what stayed the same. Now let's look at what is changing. Okay, sorry, bad advanced placement pun dad joke. So let's look at a specific prompt to do as an example. Okay, so right now we're going to take a look at the following prompt. Analyze how global trade changed and remained the same from 1700 to 1900 CE. First, after contextualization, you're going to want to have a counter thesis. And you want to make the argument based upon continuity and change. You want to start with a universal claim about what has stayed the same, and then provide a universal claim about what has changed. Here is an example. So here's the example. Our counter thesis is, while global empires continued to trade ideas and goods in the Indian Ocean region, and now here's our thesis, new European maritime empires introduced state violence and global monopolies into trade routes. Okay, so now let's move to your body paragraphs. Just like with the other long essays, separate the body paragraphs into skills. One paragraph should be on change, the other on continuity. So let's start with a topic sentence on continuity and change depending upon the paragraph. So first off is our example of a continuity body paragraph topic sentence. Here's an example. Empires continued to trade with India and China for goods and ideas in the 1700s. Here's a body paragraph, another one on change. Portugal and Spain used naval dominance to establish trading ports in India and Mesoamerica. Now we do rule of three. Just like before, this will mean a concrete detail, description of the detail, and then analysis connecting back to the topic sentence. Repeat this until you have at least 3 in each body paragraph. Okay, let's finish our body paragraph with analysis, or why the change and continuity take place. Here's an example. So the example is, Europeans used violence and state-led controls in order to find raw resources for manufacturing. Notice here that I've given a reason why Europeans used violence and state-led controls, and it's signaled by the words "in order to." The reason is to find raw resources for eventual manufacturing. So in this graphic, what I've demonstrated is how you should organize and structure your essay. First, as usual with all essays, you want to start off with contextualization. That means you're going to provide 3 specific issues that are going to help to frame the essay. Those issues should come from before or during the prompt. Then in that same introductory paragraph, you want a counter thesis and a thesis statement. And once you're done with that, your first body paragraph, the one that I've color-coded in red, should be explaining the counter thesis. Remember, the counter thesis is not your main argument, so you're not defending it, but you do want to explain it in the essay, and you do that in your first body paragraph. You do that by providing a topic sentence that it's either going to be about change or continuity. Remember, the counter thesis here is based on skill. So if your counter thesis is on change, then that first body paragraph is on change. If it's on continuity, then it should be on continuity. Next, you're going to do rule of 3. Remember, rule of 3 is just 3 examples. But when we do that, you want to do a block. What do I mean by the block? You're going to provide a concrete detail plus description of the detail, and then commentary connecting that concrete detail back to your argument. You want to do this 3 times in each body paragraph. You finish up your body paragraph with analysis. Explain why the change or continuity happened. Now, in your second and third body paragraph, you are then defending your thesis. So this is where, again, it depends on what skill you use for your main argument, change or continuity, but you're going to defend that by providing a body paragraph on change or continuity, whatever your thesis was based upon. Then, just like in the previous paragraph, rule of 3, concrete detail and description, commentary connecting the concrete detail back to your argument. Repeat that 3 times. And finish by analyzing, explaining why the change or continuity happened. So, what are our takeaways when we're thinking of the CCOT essay, or the change and continuity over time essay? The first thing that I want you to get across as a takeaway is that the CCOT essay is pretty much the same as all the other essays you're going to face. It has the exact same structure: contextualization, counter thesis, thesis, body paragraphs with a topic sentence, rule of 3, and analysis. Our second big takeaway, though, is the big difference. In our topic sentences, it is so important that you express either a change, basically meaning how things had a cause and effect over time, or a continuity, how the patterns were the same over the time. And last up, our third big thing that's so important. As with all essays, it is so important that you're aiming for complexity. And the way you can aim for complexity is to have that counter thesis, thesis structure. Choose which skill you can do more of, which less of. The one that you do less should be your counter thesis. The one you do more should be your thesis. Then in your body paragraphs, you're going to be explaining your counter thesis and defending your thesis. Okay, good luck at writing the essay. Trust me, if you follow through with these skills and practice on them, you're just going to get better and better at writing. Thanks so much. See you in class.